r/AskReddit. Students of Reddit, have you ever lost your temper with a teacher? What's your story? In Heidelberg on my year abroad, my friend and I took a class that we thought would be interesting. It wasn't. The teacher was a complete cow who hated her non-German students, and as we were the only two that semester, go figure. She was hawkish with me after learning I was part German, but awful to my friend. We missed 2 classes overall, had to return to our own universities for a little. This was agreed beforehand, so we missed 2 of her classes. Every other time we went to that class was together, so we missed the same amount. However, the woman told my friend she automatically failed her class as she missed 3. But I was fine as I'd only missed 2. We both decided to never go to her class again or sit her exam. Oddly enough, that exam never showed up on our year abroad credits, and we both passed with high marks. When I was in 10th grade, I had this world history teacher who didn't really like me. It was the middle of the semester, and she told me I hadn't turned in an essay. I knew I had, but I did it again and turned it in. She told me I didn't turn it in again. I did it again and turned it in. She told me I didn't turn it in again. I told my mom and she talked to the teacher. The teacher gave me a 0 and claimed I never did the work. My mom and I were pissed because we knew I turned it in so many times. And that's the story of how I got a C instead of a B I would have gotten. My 2nd grade teacher was Sister Bridget. She didn't like me at all. One day I was feeling ill and I asked to use the restroom. She told me I was lying. As she tried to tell me why I was a liar, I vomited all over her shoes. I can relate to this. When I was 8, I had a sudden and intense urge to go pee minutes before the school bell was set to ring for home time. I asked the teacher if I could use the bathroom as I was desperate to pee, and she said absolutely not, and I wasn't about to trick her and sneak off home early. I started begging her frantically, but she ignored me and started addressing the class about what to bring for tomorrow. I felt my body give in halfway through her speech and just stood there behind my desk. As the bell rang, all the other children ran out of the classroom instantly. The teacher approached me and sarcastically said back, quote, "I thought you were busting to go home." I told her I already had and kept my head down. I think she was just as embarrassed explaining to my mum why she hasn't let me use the bathroom. I hadn't been doing well in calculus all year, but I was trying my best and just struggling. My teacher was one of the cool ones, the kind who act laid back and crack jokes and all that. I think this guy just thought I wasn't trying, and he was as frustrated with me as I was with myself. One day in class he made a sort of passive-aggressive joke at my expense, something about if you would just try harder. He didn't even say it in front of other students, just to me, but I was so over him thinking I wasn't trying that I got up and walked straight out and to the school counselor's office. I would have been sent there anyway for walking out in class, so I decided to expedite the process. She was really kind and talked me down from being so upset. Anyway, that was on a Friday, so I didn't see my calculus teacher again until Monday. I was hoping we could just pretend it didn't happen, but no such luck. He pulled me into the hallway to talk and truly, genuinely apologized. He offered to adjust his office hours, which didn't work for me, to give me extra help. He ended up helping me pass the class barely, but I still passed. I wouldn't have graduated without it. In retrospect, just talking to him more openly from the get-go probably would have been the more mature thing to do, but I was an awkward, self-doubting teenager who didn't know how to ask for help. In the end, the experience helped me improve that skill and advocate for myself. I still hate calculus though. We got this admin in my school who have nicknamed the Pickinator. In my sophomore year, she was patrolling the school, fucking Dolores Umbridge style. She loves ruining kids' days, and she busts kids for the most minor of things. This really annoying kid no one likes came up and snatched my backpack and ran. So I ran after him and ripped it out of his hands. Pickinator comes outside and immediately says, "You two, stop wrestling around and come with me." She escorted us to the office because apparently we were wrestling and fighting. Tried to tell her I was just getting my shit back, and she wasn't having it. So I just said, well, got my shit back, no reason to stick around now, and went to my next class, which was starting shortly. I got called down later anyway, but my admin pretty much told me she overreacted and to just forget it happened. Pickinator hates me now. You should start wearing a Luchada mask to school. I once had some kind of stomach pain, the worst pain I've felt my whole life, and was in science class. I started groaning in agony in first fucking row, and my bud next to me said I needed to leave and go to the hospital. I wanted to, but my teacher the cunt ignored me, and the tears that had now started streaming down my face. A minute later I just stood up, walked to the door, and as soon as she tried to talk shit I told her to pipe the fuck down, and walked out with a raised middle finger. Then I proceeded to throw up in the trash outside. Good times. I'd have brought that trash can back into the classroom and set it down pointedly in front of her. 8th grade science class. God, I hated her. For the sake of this, let's say her name was Mrs. B. Early on in the year, Mrs. B had given us a science fair project due in January. We had several class periods over the course of those months as well to work on it. My project was creating an unbeatable tic-tac-toe program. Did work properly, but that's beside the point right now. Because it would take significantly longer to have 20 people, the amount of tests we had to do, each play 3 rounds with the thing. So I asked her if I could do fewer and she agreed, allowing me to only do 7 people, which I got done shortly before Christmas break, only about 1.5 school weeks until the project was due. I make sure to thank her for letting me do fewer, as I would never have gotten it done in time otherwise. She turns to me with this confused look as says something to the effect of, I never said that, you have to do 20 trials like everyone else. I was so insanely furious, I even got a witness who had overheard her give me a lower number come in as evidence. Both me and my witness ended up in detention. I did end up getting the project done, but barely, and it was rushed as hell. I still occasionally think of it and want to punch a wall. Edit. Apparently I had a typo. I had meant to type didn't work properly, but the way it came out, not only do I sound like a humble brag, but I also started an argument later down the comment chain. Oop. It's kind of infuriating when teachers give you detention just for disagreeing. If you weren't being rude, isn't that an abuse of power on her part? Why don't teachers ever get in trouble for this? My IPoint teacher wanted to inspect my work, spreadsheets or a Word document or something. Anyway, she accidentally deleted the file. I was upset and tried to point out she just deleted my work. She started to shout at me, telling me I should have saved frequently. I shouted back, telling her that wasn't the issue. She outright deleted the file. It got pretty heated. My parents were called. We were outright yelling at each other for a good couple of minutes, to the point where we were both in tears. I was about 14 at the time. She should have known better. A few years later my sister had her when she went to that school, and that same teacher berated my sister, calling her names etc. What a bitch. Edit. It was a long time ago, and I was pretty stressed at the time. I can't remember exactly how, but after several attempts, I wasn't able to restore it. Looking back with what I know now, there are things I could have done to restore it now, even going as far as giving myself admin rights and having a poke around. But I was 14 at the time, being taught IT by a French teacher. How do you accidentally delete a file? How are you the IT teacher and accidentally delete a file? I had a bout of stomach flu which was so intense that it damaged my intestines, and as a result my body couldn't process certain foods for a while. This caused me severe pain. I mainly had cramps that were so bad I couldn't do anything useful anymore except curl up and wait for them to be over. It took me more than a month to figure out a very limited amount of safe stuff to eat, which I ended up slowly expanding on over time. I did miss a few weeks of school when it first started though. Directly after my math teacher's class she insisted I come to her and explain why I missed so many of her classes. I had a note from my GP ready, but she dismissed it. She told me she could tell that I wasn't sick but that I was just lazy and lying to everyone, and that she was severely disappointed in me. I literally just walked away, which is the closest I ever got to having a temper tantrum in class. In retrospect, I wish I had told her what I was really thinking, being that I was very disappointed in her. Edit, typos and such. I was pretty sick for a while, and a teacher asked me why I wasn't in the last few classes, and I said I was sick. The teacher said, "You're not sick, you look completely healthy." I said, "Oh, look at you with the all-powerful eyes that can see disease inside of people at an instant." He kind of realized what he said, apologized and told me to sit. He didn't like me anymore, which is rare, and just kind of let me do my own thing for the rest of the semester. When I was a senior in high school, I had a nap English teacher that would grade people based on how much she liked them essentially. I had long hair and stretched earlobes, and she despised me, even though I was an excellent student in all aspects. She claimed I didn't turn in assignments on time to justify my grades. So I spoke with my guidance counselor and she investigated for me. Turns out she had sorted completed assignments into piles of good and bad, and would arbitrarily grade the papers based on who she felt sucked up to her the most that day. I presented a book report on the Odyssey, which was by far the longest and most detailed presentation of the whole class, and she gave me a D. I told her, "Fuck you, this is the end of your career," and walked out because I had sent an identical copy to the guidance counselor. She presented it to the school board, eventually got her fired, and the best part was she was also a driver's ed instructor and lost her job doing that as well. Apparently I wasn't the first to speak up about her, but I was the one that out the nail in the coffin, and it felt great. Did we have the same teacher? Because I have a very similar story. Teacher hated me because she was spouting some bullshit about how red pistachios don't and never have existed, and me being the pretentious fuck I was, I had to prove her wrong. So I bought a whole bag on the internet and dropped them on her desk a few weeks later. She had never liked me, but after that I couldn't pull a C in her English class. I told my guidance counselor my senior year to put me in remedial English just so I could pass and wouldn't have to take her. Small school, she was the only non-remedial senior English teacher. So they made a separate class with the student's mom being the teacher. She was only qualified to be a sub technically, and it consisted of me and all the senior boys who wanted to blow off a harder class. You can imagine how well that went. I then went on to graduate with a master's degree in English and a 3.89 GPA, and all the students and other administration of that school who said she would best prepare you for college English can suck it, because all she taught was syntax, and didn't even teach us how to do an annotated bibliography or format MLA or APA papers. She taught us nothing useful. So yes, a long time ago in 3rd grade we were having a math lesson and our para was helping our teacher out. I wasn't great at math at that young age and I would ask her for help, and then she would ignore me and move on to a different student. I finally got her attention and asked her if she could please help me, and she finally said yes and then moved on to a different student. So I got pissed and slammed my fists on the desk. The whole room went silent and I said, "I need help on my math, can I please have some help?" The principal came down and talked to me and asked why I did that, because I got reported for being disruptive. She was really nice, and I never got sent to the principal's office before, and I told her what happened, and she gave a death glare to the paragraph. What is a para? A friend of mine wanted to go to a certain university that was out of state and somewhat tough to get into. The counselor told him not to waste his time as he would never get in. This pissed him off, so he went to the principal, who told him to trust the counselor as that was her job. He applied anyways, got accepted, and taped 2 copies to the counselor and principal's door. He couldn't afford to go anyways, but he was trying to prove a point. A true hero. Something similar happened to me. I left public school in the 5th grade for various reasons and was homeschooled from there. I still had friends who went to public school, so senior year of high school I wanted to go back. We went to the assigned counselor and she just takes a glance at our transcripts and asks what we want to do once we graduate. Upon mentioning college she laughed, like an out loud, throw your head back laugh, and says that I'll never make it, and that my only hope is to take the classes offered by the local factories, if I wanted to graduate. Guess who's in junior year now, bitch? I once flipped on my German teacher. I'm German. She obviously didn't like me, and her marks were biased as fuck. This one time she gave me an F on a poetry interpretation. Grading that is ridiculous as you can just interpret it as whatever and the mark depends on the teacher's mood. I always got an A for grammar because the bitch has to give me credit where my work is quantifiably good. After handing the papers back out to the students she did some debriefing about the whole thing, comparing what everyone wrote. She told the whole class how good my thoughts on the poem and some of the passages that I wrote were and wanted me to read out loud what I wrote. I just said you gave me an F, stood up and left. Cunt. I had an English teacher like this too. Nobody believed me until she randomly decided to make us do posters. Due the next day, I went above and beyond because I knew she liked crafty shit and figured she couldn't possibly give me a bad grade if I was creative. Oh, this poster is wonderful. Who made it? I did. Oh. And she literally threw it in the trash. What the actual fuck with other people present? Care to elaborate on the situation and/or aftermath a little bit? I can't imagine a teacher being able to just trash a student's assignment without immediately pulling it out going haha just kidding. And even that would be cruel. When I was in high school we had this small angry teacher that played rugby, or at least tried to, that was always belittling students to feel better about himself. One day we had physical ed and our teacher couldn't come, so the little and always moody teacher that played rugby came to replace her. Little teacher was trying to show off his skills at rugby and making our class play some game where we had to tackle who had the ball. We didn't tackle hard enough, so the little guy joined to tackle some students and show off his grandness. He was having fun being unstoppable and yelling at us if that was all we could do. I was kinda mad, so I just went running at full speed at him. Little teacher got tackled and hit the ground so hard. That was something our class laughed about all year. Edit. For those wondering, he used to despise and treat us like he was reaffirming his manliness, though he had some good points too, and was kinda crazy. It didn't seem like a student-teacher relationship, so it wasn't that boring most of the time. I guess that's the reason why most of us still remember that little moody teacher. What did the teacher do after? He was a bit surprised. From that point he acknowledged me as a potential rugby player and then told the rest to be equally brave. What I mean by acknowledge is that he often told me to give rugby a try where he played it. There was one guy who didn't have really good grades. He went to play rugby and somehow got an A grade in technology. Guess who was the teacher of that subject? Hey, at least he didn't cry and gave you an F in technology. My 8th grade math teacher, she was the absolute worst and ruined any appreciation I had for mathematics forever. She'd purposely skip chapters and mark correct answers wrong if you wrote numbers a certain way. For example, you never put that little dash at the top of your number 7s or your answer was wrong. Also pop quizzes. She had this rule where a pop quiz could cover any material out of the book, even if it was something we hadn't gone over yet. And it's not like we could take the book home to study. It was one of those classes where the textbook had to be left in the classroom. I just quit doing any work for her after that. It royally pissed her off. I had a maths teacher who marked my answer wrong for writing my 7 with a little line through the middle, as I didn't underscore my 1s, which prevented me from getting into the top class when I was maybe 14 or so. Fuck her. Obligatory not me. When I was in high school, a girl absolutely lost her shit on my math teacher. The way class generally went was we'd go in and he'd have the day's assignment written on the board. Then he'd spend the first 20 minutes of class teaching new concepts and going over problems. Then he'd give us about 30 minutes to work on our assignments and he'd sit at his desk and answer questions. Overall, I really liked this style, but some did not. This girl did not. About 3/4 of the way through the year, she snapped. The class was no different than any other. He explained the new stuff and did some examples and then said anyone who needs individual help just line up at my desk and I'll be happy to help. She fucking lost it. What do you mean that's it? I don't wanna wait in line for 20 minutes. Help me now. This is fucking bullshit. Fuck you. She was getting angrier and angrier. And to my teacher's credit, the angrier she got, the calmer and quieter my teacher got. And the calmer and quieter he was, the more furious she would get. Teacher, calm. I understand you're upset. How about we go to the hallway and talk about it? Student, yelling, no, fucking help me with this shit here and now. Teacher, calmer, quieter than before. Now there's no need for that kind of language. We can discuss this civically. I'm happy help you why way I can. Student, even angrier and louder. Fuck you. Fuck this. I hate this fucking school. Teacher, still very calm. I'm sorry you're so frustrated. What can I do? Student, now screaming as loud as she possibly can. Get fucked, fuck this, fuck that, fuck everything, incoherent screaming and cursing. This is when the principal walked in and took the girl out of class. The teacher left for a moment to talk to the principal while we could hear this girl screaming all the way to the office. Just every expletive in the book, all directed at the teacher. When it was all over, the teacher calmly walked back in, stood at the front, and said, well, anyone else have a problem with me? I'm happy to discuss it, if we can be civil. No one said a word. Okay then. Anyone who needs help come see me. Class went on like normal after that. In retrospect, that teacher handled that shit like a fucking pro in every possible way. Never saw that girl in class or in school again. So something had to have been going on to set her off like that. But I've never seen a student go off like that before or since. And I've worked as a teacher and sub for nearly a decade. Edit to at, something had to be going on with that girl, but I have no backstory. I don't know if she was struggling with grades or with that class, or if that teacher said or did something to set her off I don't know about. I just know what I saw in class. I'm certain something was going on with that girl to set her off, though, either at home or school. I just think that math class was her last straw for whatever reason. I had a teacher at private college that enjoyed calling everybody stupid and that we were only studying there because our parents showed how much they earned. There were a lot of scholarship students, myself included, but who cares? I can't be quiet when I hear these kind of thing, so we discussed almost every class. She failed most of the class on the first course. We fought with the dean, and she let us do another test with another teacher. Everybody passed. On the second course she gave us, same thing, but this time the dean said we were being dramatic. The teacher decided that there would not be a test, only a group presentation. She settled the groups. I got stuck with two lazy guys who did nothing. I did the entire paper and the presentation. Both of them got a 9A, and I got a 7C-. It was the last time I did a paperwork with the names of the people who did nothing, no matter who they were. I needed a C to pass, failed because of a point. I tried to talk to the dean, she didn't listen to me, so I had to do the course again. I could do it with another teacher, but I chose her. I was the worst student she ever had. I sat in the first row, always made a fool of her. Once I made her cry. The next year she wasn't a teacher there anymore. She made me lose my scholarship because of that grade. I do not regret it, would do it again with an extra bit of cruelty. Kamikazed her career Mayo. I still don't know why she started it. And it wasn't in my class only. I don't really understand why she was a teacher if she hated her students to the point it becomes personal. When I was in 8th grade, my science teacher decided the day before the last test of the year to give us an extra 16 pages of new material to learn by ourselves and appear in the test. Needless to say, everyone lost their shit and started complaining. I wrote her an angry letter. I was later forced either to apologize or they would tell my parents. I apologized because I may have been a little inappropriate, and by the end of the year she was fired after her first year in the school. She also thought it was a good idea to bring her dogs to part of the lessons in the science lab when there are 2 kids who are allergic to dogs. LMAO, I had a teacher that thought latex allergies were fake. One day we did an experiment with balloons and a kid said she was allergic to latex and the teacher screamed, "No you ain't." Then started rubber her violently with the balloon. She got fired that semester. This happened to me in college. I was near the end of my senior year and needed to take an elective to satisfy degree requirements. I took basketball since I love the game. The professor was an assistant coach for the school's basketball team and he didn't give a fuck about the class. Our class starts at 8 AM in the old basketball gym on campus, and he was the only way that we could get into the gym. A few times he had a colleague come open up the gym for us, but at least 7 or 8 times over the semester, he just didn't show up. And also after 15 minutes, the students just went back to their dorms or apartments. I was a commuter driving 45 minutes each way, so I had to skip work on the days I had class. I was working to pay for school. Near the end of the semester, someone in class asked him about his attendance. Then he makes an announcement that anyone that doesn't show up for the final exam, basically whoever could make a basket, will be failed. On the day of the final exam, he didn't show up. No colleague. Nothing. On that last day there were 30 students freezing cold sitting outside of the gym in December. During professor evaluations, I ripped him a new one and wish I could have let him know to his face that his laziness cost me money. Edit. Okay, so some of y'all have some questions, so I'll address a few here. Imagine waking up early enough in time to drive 45 minutes each way to an 8 AM class only to find out that your professor decided not to come in. Not once or twice, but 8 times. We all waited 15 minutes for him to show up, but he never did, so we leave. I value my time, even if it's more than dollars and cents. The professor didn't value anyone else's. I don't understand when some of you say he saved me time. Would love some insight. He cost me money because the time spent driving to and from an OSHO class could have been spent earning. I didn't care about getting a basketball education, but did care that he made it sound like he would fail us if we didn't show up, especially on the day of the final, because he made the announcement as if he was pissed he was questioned for not showing up in the past. It was as if he deliberately wanted to screw us over. Similar situation with me in college, but in Spanish 1. The professor showed half of the time. I and all the other students ripped him a new one in the evaluations. We also kept reporting him throughout the semester because we weren't learning Spanish, and it was not only required, but Spanish 2 was as well. To this day I've never learned Spanish. I dropped Spanish 2 after I looked at the first test and there were just tears drops where my name went. I knew that's where my name went, but couldn't do anything else on the exam. It wasn't just me either. There were several people in my Spanish 2 class that were in my Spanish 1 class who were clueless. We tried going to the dean, but with no luck. They wouldn't let us retake Spanish 1 because we got A's, even though we knew nothing. In the end I literally ended up switching colleges that didn't have a foreign language credit requirement. It's like that shit cursed me or something. I was so excited about learning another language and still want to, but for the life of me, can't. I'm hoping when my son enrolls in Spanish in HS next year we will learn together. Thank you so much for watching the entire video. I would be so grateful if you could like this video and subscribe to the channel. New videos every day.